brackets are in that really the same.
Okay, so like if I have the absolute value of 4, what's my absolute value of 4? 4. What's the absolute value of negative 4? 4. Very good. So we have two answers that are giving us the same thing, right? Or sorry, two problems technically, or two different numbers. They're giving us the same answer. Does that make sense? Okay? So now, with that being said, we are going to be doing absolute value equations. We already looked at how to do an expression. Now we're going to look at how do you solve an equation with absolute value. Okay? Not crazy hard if you memorize a couple steps or remember a few things to do. Okay? First thing you must do is you must isolate the absolute value symbol. Alright? So write that in there. Let's go. Start writing if you haven't. Isolate the absolute value. So now when I look at C here, if I see here I have the absolute value of x plus 2, okay? This absolute value is not all by itself yet, is it? So in this case, we would want to move the 2 over first, okay? Now, if I look back here at A and B, are the absolute values already by themselves? Yeah, absolute values by themselves. Even on D, the absolute value is by itself. We don't care what's inside of it. It's just the absolute value marking should be all by itself on one side. So here, this 2's on the outside. We got to move the outside guys over first. So first thing that's going to happen is anything on the outside of those bars have to go to the other side. Once we get it to the other side, once we isolate, once we get to the other side, we're going to do step 2. And we're going to write 2 equations. Okay, there's going to be a positive and a negative equation. So there's going to be 2 equations. One's going to be positive and one's going to be negative because positive 4 gave us 4 and negative 4 gives us 4. So there's a positive and a negative. Okay? All right, so let's take a look here real quick on the first problem. Okay? When they just gave you the absolute value of P equals 8, what are the 2 numbers that I could plug in here to make this statement true?
2, 8, negative 8.
8 and negative 8, right? 8 and negative 8, okay? Now, what I want you to think about is write 2 equations, okay? So you're going to have, and when you separate your 2 equations, the absolute value is going to drop off. Okay, so you're going to have P equals 8 and P equals negative 8. Okay, so this is your positive equation and your negative equation. Okay, so we already have it isolated. Step 1 was done. Step 2, write your 2 equations, the positive and the negative. Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's either equal to positive 8 or it's equal to negative 8. Okay, so now if I were to take the time to plug this back in, the absolute value of 8, will that equal 8? Yeah, and then you plug in your negative 8. Will the absolute value of negative 8 equal 8? Yeah, so this is good. Okay, so these are your 2 answers, 8 and negative 8. Okay, all right, let's try another one. All right, is my absolute value already isolated? Yes, already isolated, right? So we're going to break it into 2 equations. So what do you think your 2 equations is going to look like? Good, h equals 5 and h equals negative 5. Now, these are your 2 equations. That's great because there's nothing to do. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to do anything. All right? So now, if I take a second and plug this back in, and I plug in 5 here, the absolute value of 5, will that equal negative 5?
Yes.
You shouldn't be saying no right now. What's the absolute value of 5? 5.
What?
So this is a problem, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Anytime you have an absolute value that's isolated, okay, an absolute value equal to a negative number, it's no solution. Because absolute values are always positive, okay? They're always going to be equal to a positive. So in this case, if the original problem right here, once you've isolated, if this is equal to a negative 5, it's actually no solution. And you don't have to show any work on that. As soon as you see absolute value equal to a negative, you write no solution and you move on. Okay? Yes, ma'am?
So you don't even really need the equation h equals 5? Because it's not going to work?
Well, when we plugged it in to check it, it doesn't work. You're going to have times when things aren't going to work out. All right? It'll be the same thing here. If you plug this in, the absolute value of negative 5 does not give you negative 5. Neither one of these work. So since they don't work, your answer is no solution.
So anytime it's a thing which equals a negative number?
Anytime it's an absolute value that equals a negative number, not a thing.
Sorry.
A thing, really? Okay, so not a thing. Anytime you have an absolute value equal to a negative, that's a no solution. Okay, so let's write that off to the side. Anytime an absolute value, I'm gonna abbreviate that a little bit, is equal to a negative number, the answer is no solution. Okay, so anytime an absolute value is equal to a negative number, the answer is no solution. Okay? All right, we're gonna go down and let's try C now. Okay, let's try C. So if I'm looking at C, okay, step one is to isolate. So how do I isolate the absolute value? Sam?
You subtract 2 from both sides.
Good, so we're gonna subtract 2 from both sides, right? So those cancel. So I have the absolute value of x equals 7, right? So step one, isolate. Step two, now write your two equations, right? Write your positive and your negative. So x will equal 7, and x will equal negative 7. Again, write your two equations. You have the positive and the negative. Okay, so step one, isolate. Step two, write them. And whatever your answers are, those are going to be your answers right there. Okay, you don't have to check. I was just trying to show you why you end up with a no solution sometimes. Okay, all right, let's try the next one. On D. Okay, so first off, isolate the absolute value. So is the absolute value already isolated? Yes, it is. Okay, so now let's write our two equations. So what's our two equations going to look like here? Anybody besides Sam? Want to give it a whirl? Okay, we go.
2 times 3x 2x minus 1.
What would your other one be, you think?
2x minus 1 is negative.
Very good, okay. So absolute value isolated, yes it is. Then you're writing your positive and your negative. You haven't figured out. Positive is just a positive 5, negative is a negative 5. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so yeah, you're going to get two answers. So now how do you solve? What would be the first step linked on this first one here? What would we do first?
You do plus 1.
Good, so plus the 1. So 2x equals 6. And then Ben, what would we do now?
Divide 2.
Good, so x equals
3.
okay, so there's one answer. Okay, so now let's go to the other one. What are we going to do on this guy?
Add 1.
Okay, so we're going to add 1 again. So 2x equals what now? Negative 4. And then what are we going to do? Yeah, negative 2. Good. X equals negative 2. Okay. All right, we're going to stop there for right now. Make sure you got that problem done before you leave. Okay. You're going to be back at 12.